I was born in Tijuana, Mexico. At the age of 9 months old, my parents moved to they moved to San Isidro. Those are the people that know San Diego. We lived in San Isidro, I believe, a year and a half. And then when I was like maybe 2 years old, we moved to Chula Vista. Chula Vista is right next to Otay, between San Isidro and National City, and that's where I grew up. I went to my elementary school there, junior high school there in Chula Vista. Who was I? Niles, I was that guy that literally I knew as a child, 5 years old, I could tell you, maybe probably even younger, that I was going to be a police officer.
Why? What do you think that was?
You know what? I really don't know, but I'll tell you what kind of guy. And you could go back and talk to anybody that knew me as a kid. I was that guy that I was always a pretty strong kid, and I always boxed, I wrestled. I mean, I was in pretty good shape throughout my life. It was a younger, not now, I'm older, but I'm telling you, I was that guy that was always protecting the special ed kids. Back then, now we call them Spectrum. Back then, there was no such thing. So we had kids with this that were dyslexic, that couldn't read, and I was that guy that wasn't volunteering because I wasn't the smartest person in school either. But anybody that picked on somebody that I knew that was, we call them Spectrum now. Back then, we call them slow. Dude, I was that guy that was always protecting them. I was that guy that in the third grade, fourth, fifth grade, I was fighting sixth graders that were picking on these kids. So throughout my life, I've always been that guy that always, my friends, the majority of my friends, they were special ed. And I'm not talking about that they were dyslexic. They looked normal, but they were picked on.
Yeah.
So even as a young man, I was that guy that was always protected. Even throughout my life, I've always been that guy that's been standing up for the weak. And I'm not saying they're weak, but the ones that people picked on. So that's whom I always was.
So where do you think that came from, David? Because I know a lot of military guys and a lot of law enforcement guys have this sheepdog mentality that I think in my mind is kind of Chris Kyle kind of made that term famous. But where do you think that sheepdog mentality came from within? Did it come from your parents? Where do you think that came from?
It came from my parents. My dad was a pastor. Okay. His father was a pastor of a church, the Apostolic Church, Pentecostal church. My mom was a woman of prayer. I hear these stories on my shows. I talk to a lot of cops. I talk to a lot of con men. I talk to a lot of convicts. And when I hear their stories that they had no relationship with their father, or they didn't know who their father was, I am so blessed, Niles, that I saw my father pray. I saw my father help people. So I think the sheepdog mentality comes from my dad, comes from my grandfather. I mean, my lineage. They were servants.
Yeah.
But yet they were warriors.
Yeah.
My dad never served in the military, but I'll tell you, my dad would be the first. If somebody did something to us or my mom, my dad would be the first to knock the guy out. But yet at the same time, you pray for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I come from that. And I think that, I believe you're born with it. I believe that it's displayed. I think we're all born with that sheepdog, but some refuse to acknowledge it, or it's never displayed. To me, it was displayed when I saw the weak being picked on by bullies. That's why even today I hate bullies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's why I was a good cop, because I always saw these guys as the bullies, as the predators. And you know what? That sheepdog, I didn't know that it came from. I'm
not saying it came from.
No. But what I'm saying is, you know what? After I retired, I opened up my company. It's called www.sheepdog Assist.
Yeah.
And the assist stands for Active Critical Incident Stress Trauma. But I've always, after I retired, saw myself as a sheepdog. We're there to protect. But I was that kid. And and being first generation, was very hard because my parents didn't know anything about college. Dude, we didn't know any cops. All my friends were from school, became heroin addicts, became members of, they were gang members from Otay. I mean, you asked me when I was a little boy at 10 years old, 8 years old, what do you want to be? I would have told you I want to be a police officer. You asked Mario Martinez, what are you going to be? I'm going to be from Otay. You have Oscar Martinez. I'm talking about guys that I grew up with. What are you going to be? I'm going to be a member of the MA. I mean, nobody wanted to be a doctor. I mean, we're talking about the barrio, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they would always respect me because they knew that I wanted. So now, my first encounter with a police officer, I think I was 12 years old. I'm at a high school football game between Castle Park and Sweetwater. There's a huge riot because there's two barrios, Otay against National City, OTNC, Old Town National City back then. And they're fighting in the parking lot. The whole stadium is up in arms. So they called Chula Vista PD, calls the sheriffs call other departments. And this is my first encounter with a cop. I'm standing, because I love football, I'm standing on the field because the bleachers, everybody's fighting, watching the game. They haven't stopped the game yet. And I remember I see a bunch of cops. They form a skirmish line and they're all walking toward us, but we're getting ready to score a touchdown. I'll never forget that. I'm watching a 12-year-old kid, and as the cops are coming, moving the crowd, I didn't see him. All I remember was looking up. I saw this huge, tall, dude, I was a kid, cop, and he hits me. He has a straight-on baton, and he has it through his fingers, and he hits me right here in the solar plex. I remember when he hit me, first thing I thought is, wait, why'd you hit me? And I remember going to the ground. I could not breathe. I thought I was going to die because he hit me in the solar plex here.
Yeah.
I go to the ground. People are trampling me because now they're even walking over me because they're moving the line. And I'll never forget that. I remember looking up at that cop as he tramples over me. I mean, dude, he was doing his job. I was just in his way because I love football. And I don't blame him. But I remember thinking, I will never be that cop. I will never. And I remember laying there, not being able to breathe, getting kicked by people, just thinking. And I never forgot that, thinking I will never be that cop.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting, David. Why didn't? And maybe it gets back to your parents as well. But why not have any residual negative attitude towards cops after he whacks you
I
like
probably
that?
did, but right now I'm just telling you
Yeah.
what the thought that comes to mind
Interesting,
was
yeah.
I will, because I knew I was going to be a cop.
Yeah.
Dude, I knew I was going to be a cop. I just didn't know when or how. But now I'm getting ready to graduate from Castle Park High School. It's
Okay.
1978. I go see my counselor. His name was Mr. Stone. I remember him. And as I walk in to go talk to him, it's, last couple of weeks, you talk to your counselor. Snow. That's what it was. And I walk in, and I remember him looking at me. He's looking at my grades. Dude, I wasn't the smartest, right? So he's looking at my grades, and he goes, I read here that your dad's in construction. I go, yeah. I go, he's a cement finisher. Back then, cement finisher were, higher than a laborer. And he goes, you have the build, because I was a pretty thick guy. And he goes, I think you should be a cement finisher like your dad. And I looked at him, and I used to work in the summer with my dad. Dude, I hated working construction. Not because I just hated it, right? Because I knew I wanted to be a cop. And I looked at him and I go, sir, I want to be a police officer. He goes, well, do you know any police officers? I go, no. Well, what do you know about them? I go, I don't know. I go, I know I have to go to an academy. Can you help me? And he goes, no. He goes, I think you're going to be a good cement finisher like your father, but you have to start off. And he broke down my career as a laborer, and he broke down like I didn't know, right? I grew up in it.
Yeah.
And I remember walking home that day. Back then, dude, it wasn't like today, where all these kids, you have 1,000 cars waiting for kids. Dude, we walked. At my school, I know you hear it walking in the snow. In San Diego, we didn't walk in the snow. You grew up in Bonita.
Yeah.
So dude, but it was a 2-mile walk every morning to school and back. And I remember walking back from school, and when you see those cartoons where somebody has a beautiful balloon and then also it's deflated. I remember I was 17 years old and I'm walking back. I was 18. I was walking back, graduated, getting ready to graduate. I'm walking back, and I remember being deflated because, dude, we were first generation. When I got home, I go, Mom, he said that I got to go to college. Where's a college? Dude, there's a college, Southwestern College. We didn't know. We're first generation. My cousins, nobody knew. We're first generation. So, dude, I'm thinking, I don't know how to become a cop. And that's one of the reasons why I opened up the rehabilitation program. Well, it's a long story. After reading a book called The Cross and the Switchblade, God placed it in my heart. If David Wilkerson, in that book, Cross and Switchblade, he lived, I believe, in Pennsylvania, and God placed in his heart to go to New York and preach to all these gang members. And that's how we started. It wasn't Victory Outreach. It was one of the big programs, rehabilitation. I go, if he could do it out of Pennsylvania, then I could do it here in Otay. All my friends that are gang members, I could go talk to them about Jesus, and that's when I opened New Life Outreach because of that. But like I said, I was there for 6 years, and it was there working with these probation officers, parole agents, cops that would bring guys to my program that I met cops. And they started mentoring me, saying, "You really want to be a cop?" Yeah. So and that's when I took the test for San Diego PD. I took it to Department of Corrections. I didn't pass the first test for San Diego PD, but I was eligible to take it again. I took it again. I took corrections. Corrections called me. And right when corrections called me, that's when I left the program and I started working in Department of Corrections. And going through the Academy of Corrections, I had passed the San Diego PD one. This is back in '85, but I was already with corrections. And then that's when I started working the prisons. But it was until I was 25 that I finally learned or knew how to apply and how to be a police officer. So it took me a while, but once I did, my heart and soul was there. That's what I was meant to be.